Good morning, BookTube. Here we are again. This is Johnny from West Michigan, living near Lake Michigan. So yeah, today is Sunday, the 30th of April. Is 10:14 in the morning. Is the last day of April 2017, and it is 42 degrees. It's raining, it's gray, it's dreary. The weather sucks today. But hopefully this new week, as we go into May, it'll get sunny and warm again. So yeah, I'm sitting here. We just, this morning, my wife and I went downtown to Rita's World, which is a local owned bookstore. It's not a chain. It's owned by. I think I just mentioned it. Celebrated its 50th anniversary. Carol said this morning she remembered when she was 14 years old, walking to Rita's World when it first opened up 50 years ago. Because my wife is 64 years old. Yeah, when I was 14 years old, where was I? I was living in Los Angeles. Yeah, I was 14 years old and I was in junior high. And I was, my mother just got divorced again for the second time. Yeah, my mother was divorced and working as a barmaid when I was 14 years old, and I had two younger sisters and a brother. Anyway, so yeah, we went down to Rita's World. It just celebrated 50 years. My wife remembered when she was 14 years old going down there because my wife grew up here in Holland, Michigan. And while we were down, my wife wanted to go downtown to get newspapers and to look at children's books. And I bought a book that I've been looking at called Everybody Behaves Badly, the true story behind the Hemingway's masterpiece, The Sun Also Rises, by Lesley M.M. Blume. Yeah, in the summer, it says here, in the summer of 1925, Ernest Hemingway and a clique of Ronchus companions traveled to Pambelia, Spain, for the town's famous running of the bulls. Then over the next 6 weeks, he channeled that trip's drunken brawls, sexual rivalry, midnight betrayals, and midday hangovers into his groundbreaking novel, The Sun Also Rises. This is my copy of Hemingway's Sun Also Rises. This revolutionary work redefined modern literature as much as it did his peers, who would forever after be called the lost generation. But the full story of Hemingway's legendary rise has remained untold until now. Lesley Blume resurrects the explosive, restless landscapes of 1920s Paris and Spain and reveals how Hemingway helped create his own legend. He made himself into a death-courting, bullfighting aficionado, a hard-drinking, short-fused literary genius, an expatriate bon vivant, I can't pronounce that word. Lesley Blume's vivid account reveals the inner circle of the lost generation as we have never seen it before, and shows how it still influences what we read and how we think about youth, sex, love, and excess. Yeah, for those who watch my videos, you know I collect books on the 1920s in Paris. I collect books on the Spanish Civil War, and I collect books on Hemingway, Faulkner, Scott Fitzgerald, Gertrude Stein. I collect books on that time period. James Joyce. I just showed you Shakespeare and Company, the history of Shakespeare and Company, that very famous bookstore in Paris, France, where that is also mentioned in this book, this new book. So yeah, I got that this morning, and I got out Ernest Hemingway. You know, I've never read Ernest Hemingway. I have all of his books, biographies, literary studies. You know, I haven't read Scott Fitzgerald. I have not read Hemingway. I haven't read Passos. And but I got this out, and maybe during the month of May I'll read this. It doesn't look that hard to read, you know. I probably could read it in probably a couple of days, but so maybe I'll read these in the month of May. As far as what we talked about you talked about the Spanish Civil War. Yesterday I volunteered at the library used bookstore, and I bought 2 books, and what I bought was on the Spanish Civil War. This one, I collect books on the Spanish Civil War. This one's called Spanish Civil War, Reaction, Revolution, and Revenge by Paul Preston. And I got out a book I was reading last year that I got out to maybe read during the month of May, Spain in Our Hearts, Americans in the Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 1939, by Adam Hochschild. So yeah, I got this. Maybe I'll read these during the month of May. So yeah, I got those out. I was really enjoying this when I was reading this Spain in Our Hearts. I don't know why I stopped reading it, but now maybe I have an incentive to read it since I got this book yesterday at the Book Nook. Also at the Book Nook, I picked up this monster of a book that this one is called Reclaiming History, The Assassination of President John F. Kennedy by Vincent Bugliosi. I can't pronounce that name either. This extraordinary historical book required 20 years to research and write, often challenging findings of the Warren Commission. Lee Harvey Oswald, acting alone, shot and killed President John F. Kennedy, are here confirmed beyond all doubt. But Reclaiming History does much more than that. In addition to providing a powerful and unprecedented narrative of events and a biography of the assassin, it confronts and destroys every one of the conspiracy theories that has grown up since the assassination, exposing their selective use of evidence, flawed logic, and outright deceptions. So thoroughly documented, so compelling, lucid in its conclusions, Reclaiming History is in a sense the investigation that completes the work of the Warren Commission. In it, Vincent Bugliosi, the nation's foremost prosecutor, takes on the most important murder case in American history. It's massive. It's over 1,612 pages. I got it for $10. I bought it for $10 yesterday at the Book Nook. I also have in our library the Warren Report, the official report on the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. You can pick it up at any used bookstore or thrift store. So it's kind of fascinating reading. And yesterday, our daughter-in-law, Emily, and our granddaughter, Josie, came over. And Emily brought me a whole stack of New Yorkers magazines to look at. And she also returned a book that my oldest son borrowed a year ago. This is called The Storm of Steel by Ernest Junger. This is translated out of German. This is a memoir of a German soldier who fought in the trenches in the First World War. It's a very famous memoir of a German soldier during the First World War. So he returned that. Last night I read until almost Late into the Night, The Winter Journal by Paul Asher. I got 2 pages left. I'll finish that today. Really, I was really, it's just a great memoir. It's just really great. And I mentioned this one by Paul Asher, Report from the Interior. I'll start this one when I finish this one today. Well, I've already started reading this. See, I got a bookmark already started. And I read The Ambulance Drivers, Hemingway, Dos Passos, and A Friendship Made and Lost in War by James McGrath Morris. I read that. As far as this morning, I mentioned I just got this Reformation commentary in Scripture. The new one just came out on 1 Corinthians, and I couldn't remember the one that came before this one, and I remembered it was on Romans 9, chapters 9 through Romans 16 on the Reformation commentary series. This is the one that I was reading last year. I never really got much into it, but that's the one I got, and this is the newest one I got in the mail last week. And I'm looking at this morning for devotions. Wrote my diary this morning. I'm on page 386. Tomorrow we start May 1. I'll put my April 2017 diary away. And yeah, we go into the month of May. I was going to do a wrap-up about what I was going to read during the month of May, but I think, like I said, I'll read The Ambulance Driver by Morris next month. And I'll read 1 Corinthians next month. And I'll read Paul Asher next month. And I might read these books next month, Spanish Civil War, Spain in Our Hearts. I might read these next month. And I might read Hemingway's Sun Also Rises, his novel. And maybe I'll read Everybody Behaves Badly, this new book by Lesley, Blume. And yeah, so of course I'll always read the Holy Bible. Can't go wrong reading the Bible. I was telling my wife this morning, it's kind of interesting that when I was a child, everybody had Bibles, had a Bible, but nobody reads the Bible anymore. I mean, just read the Bible. And, but everybody will read everything else, but they don't read the Bible, which is kind of like in a way, it's part of American culture, the Bible. I mean, we're surrounded by the Bible and Christianity and the moral majority and the ultra-right and anti-abortion. And it's always in the news. It's always in the newspaper. It's always on TV and the media. When I look at the newspaper in the morning, there's always a Bible verse and a prayer. But people don't read the Bible. They read everything else. But I don't know. But yeah, my wife says that you have to remember that the people on BookTube are generally, I'm 2 generations behind them. Yesterday I look at people and they say, when I was in high school, I started reading books. Well, when they were in high school, I was having children. I was like, I'm 30 years old. Well, when I was, they're 30 years old or they're 25 years old. And, I'm going to be 65. And I'm almost generations ahead of them. So I think that's why my book taste is so different from the majority of people in BookTube. I'm not a young person. I tend to read books that are found throughout American history, like Hemingway, Scott Fitzgerald, Faulkner, Thomas Wolfe, John Updike, Norman Mailer, people from like James Joyce and Gertrude Stein, and people like people from the 19th century like Thoreau and Emerson and Nathaniel Hawthorne and Herman Melville. And I tend to read people that are part of the literary history of America. And most of the stuff that we are reviewed in BookTube, I don't think we're going to be around in 10 years. It'll be find in thrift stores or in it'll just won't be stand the test of time. And I tend to read books, mostly nonfiction. I like biographies, I like history. I like reading about people who lived during great historical periods of time, like Hemingway lived through the First World War. He was an ambulance driver. People like, people think of things like that. So I can see why people might not gravitate towards my literary taste. But yeah, I mean, how many people read Reformation Commentary series? Which is good literature. You can't go wrong. It's really worth reading. I don't know. It surprises me. I mean, how many people read Reformation, who even read the writings of John Calvin, or read the writings of Martin Luther, the reformers, the French reformers, the German reformers back in the 17th and 16th century? How many people, as I mentioned, read the English Puritans? How many people read the Spanish mystics like St. Teresa of Avila and St. John of the Cross? How many people sit down and read the Princeton theologians here in America, Charles Hodge and Archibald Hodge and B.B. Warfield? And how many people read the writings of the great American theologian Jonathan Edwards? Or, I mean, there's so much literature that's never read and never explored or even picked up by people today in our culture. Maybe we live in a culture that's become illiterate. I've mentioned that when I was you go into the church world of American evangelicalism, there's such rampant anti-intellectualism. And people don't use their minds anymore. They don't study, they don't think, they don't ponder, they don't question. They just go along with the mob, like Donald Trump, Make America Great, lift up their guns and lift up their American flag, and all this rampant extreme nationalism and all this phobia of people of other nationalities, this idea of building a wall. All this stuff is just a sign of, to me, stupidity and foolishness. So, enough of my social commentary, and so read the Bible, have a good new week, and thank you for those who have made comments, those who subscribed. I've lost 6 subscribers since last week, but hey, for those who stick around, I thank you, and until next time, bye.